Hey, welcome back. Today's video is going to be a little different format from what I've done in the past because I found that I'm not doing you a really good service. I'm wasting some of your time blathering on about unrelated and irrelevant information. Instead, we're going to stick to just one subject in today's video by following a very simple format. Let me know in the comments below if you like this new format or whether I should go back to going down bunny trails. So we're going to start with the what, and then we're going to talk about the why and the how I did it and the final result, with some conclusions at the end that might help you become a better shooter and load developer. Starting with what, I did load development on the 6.5 Creedmoor with a 153.5 grain Berger long-range hybrid target bullet for a few different reasons. The first reason is I had to change barrels. I went from the original 26-inch long barrel to my new design barrel, which is 27 inches long, and the real difference is the contour and the length. No other major changes were made. The second thing that we have new is new brass. I didn't have enough of the Lapua large rifle primer brass after match losses to continue shooting PRS Pro Series matches effectively without worrying about how much ammunition I had. So I needed to buy new brass anyway, and if you're going to have a different lot of brass, it might as well be different brass. That way, at least you can keep them separated rather easily. So I went to Alpha OCD Small Rifle Primer 6.5 Creedmoor brass. And last but not least, I wanted to try this heavier, higher BC bullet because I had two choices to get the same effective probability of hit at long range in very windy conditions. The first option was a 140 hybrid that I was previously shooting after pointing it and launching it at Mach Jesus. The second option is the 153.5 right out of the box, launched at a very sedate velocity that is well within the pressure capabilities of the 6.5 Creedmoor. And after just a little bit of testing, I eliminated the possibility of shooting the 140 hybrid at high velocities. It was just a little too rough on the brass, if you will, especially if we're going to go into moist conditions, which we run into quite frequently out here in the Pacific Northwest. Oh, heavy lift. I got an ejector mark. So let's get to the how, because that's the important thing. How did I do this load development and what result did I get? So the how for any load development starts with intelligence gathering. You have to do this step first. That means searching online forums. See if anybody else is trying to do what you're trying to do or has successfully done what you're trying to do. Talk to other shooters that might be shooting that same bullet in that same cartridge. And last but not least, use simulation software. Whether that's Quick Load or Gordon's reloading tool really doesn't matter. Use one or the other. Do some background work to build a model that works, and then figure out what your possible velocity window might be, and whether that velocity is going to suit your needs or not before you ever buy bullets or powder or send anything downrange. Because doing that first helps you to decide whether this is even a viable option. In this case, a 153.5 can be shot up to around 2,700 very safely at a moderate pressure, and I've seen several successful shooters running the 153 through 156 grain range of bullets with great success in PRS at just below 2,700, which leads me to the conclusion of the intelligence gathering. And that is, this is a very possible combination that can work and give me great precision at about 2690. But that 2690 based on intelligence is based on a variety of barrel lengths, so we're going to have to refine this for our own barrel length. But at least we know approximately where we're going. So now that we know that we're going somewhere up just under 2,700 feet a second, we have to figure out a couple of things about this new barrel, which brings me to the next step, and that is checking touch point in this new barrel with this bullet. Make sure you do this for each bullet individually because they don't come out the same. As a matter of fact, my touch measurement varied about 15 thousandths from the 153.5 to the 140 hybrid when I checked both. So do your homework, make sure you know where touch is, and know what your maximum overall length is, whether that's magazine limited or touch limited. Make sure you understand how long you can get so that you don't go any longer than that. Once you have a touch point, you need to figure out how far off you're going to start. In this case, I started 5 off, not the standard 15, because I do not know this bullet. And some of the newer long-range hybrid targets like to shoot pretty close to the lands, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss that part of the seating depth window. We'll get into seating depth at the very end of this, but I wanted to make sure that I started close enough that I wasn't going to miss a good spot in that 7 to 10 off range that some shooters are finding with these newer bullets. Before I talk about powder charge, we need to do the disclaimer and warning. Guys, remember, I have a chamber that's different from your chamber. My barrel is different from your barrel. My rifle is not your rifle. And any load that I put in my rifle that might be safe in mine may not be safe in yours. You need to do your own workup, which brings me to a safety workup for powder. I worked up the powder charge all the way to 40.6 grains of H4350, which got me to 2685. At that first step and test, I didn't have an opportunity to go higher, but I knew I was pretty close to where I wanted to be. So with a first group for 3 shots that looked like this and looked like it was a 3, I knew I had something that potentially could be good. So I just left the seating depth where it was and loaded up 30 rounds in order to shoot some groups with 40.6, 40.7, and 40.8. The safest way to work up is very slowly, especially as you approach maximum. So you guys know me. I shoot 100 yards and I shoot 600 yards, and I can do low development at either. So I decided for powder charge, it was just as well to shoot 600 yards. Out comes the electronic target, and we shot a round-robin 30-shot group, 10 of each, to see what they patterned like at 600 yards. Before we start analyzing the pattern, let me explain how I did this, because I did not chase the wind. As a matter of fact, I fired every shot with the same point of aim, regardless of wind conditions when I fired it, because I wanted to see how sensitive the bullet was to wind changes. And I found something that I didn't like, and that appeared to be the seating depth. But the 3 groups looked like this. This is 40.8, this one is 40.7, and this one is 40.6. Now, 0.4 of a minute of angle for 10 consecutive shots is good enough for PRS. I don't have to do anything else, but I'm also a tinkerer and a load developer by nature. I shot F-class after all. So I wanted to take a look at maybe making this a little better because it looks flat and wide to me. And it seems more sensitive to wind than I would expect given the conditions I was seeing through the scope. So from there, I have to pick a charge, at least for the rest of fireforming, because we're fireforming brasses, we're doing this. In that case, I picked 40.6 for a couple of reasons. The big one is we're fireforming and I want to keep the pressure down. The second one is it was only 62 degrees on the range on the day that I was shooting this, which means that velocity is going to grow some as I get into the hotter temperatures. H4350 is pretty temperature stable, but it's not completely temperature insensitive, which means that, in my experience, from 62 degrees to about 95 degrees, we're going to grow something like 9 or 10 feet a second. At 2685, that's going to take us to 2695, which is still obviously within the node and isn't out the top yet. And that's all I'm looking for is temperature forgiveness in this at this point. After the brass is fireformed and I size it the first time, I'm going to have to go check that powder charge again to see if the velocity changed significantly. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on the size of the new brass and how much you're actually fireforming it. Sometimes you're pushing that brass really hard, really far, and it's going to consume quite a bit of energy. Other times it fits the chamber pretty well, and it doesn't consume any excess over your normal full-length sized brass. It's just a matter of the brass dimensions compared to your chamber dimensions, the way it's delivered. So I loaded up 50 rounds at 40.6 grains of H4350 and went to the range with my arbor-style seating die and my arbor press, so that I could do seating depth at the range. So starting at 10 off, I got this group. This is 4 shots because I put 1 extra in there. I had 1 weird round, and it fell right in there. I was just looking to see if the weird round was going to fall in with the others, and it did, the ones on the left. Unfortunately, that one on the right was one of my normal perfect rounds, and shows me that this seating depth is probably not what I'm looking for. It's not far from the 0.005 off I was initially, and gives me the indication that, in fact, my determination that it was throwing horizontal is probably not too far off. So I pushed the bullets in 0.006 more and shot this group, a clean 200 for 3 shots. But we're not done yet, because we got to figure out where the window is. We're not looking for a slit, we're looking for a window, if not a garage door, of seating depth area where we can work within and have a well-shooting rifle. So we go 0.006 more, and I get this group, 0.204 for 3 shots. Now I've got 2 groups that are approximately 2s. Is that good enough? No, it's not, because we still don't know where the top of it is. So we have to go further. Another 0.006, and I shoot this group, a 156. Now that's pretty good. I'm glad I didn't stop. But once again, I haven't found where it starts to open up again, so we got to go further. So we go another 0.006, and I get this group with vertical in it. This one is a mid-2s. It is obviously starting to grow a bit, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for the bounds of our window, or garage door in this case, to see where it's going. But what do we do from there? Where do we pick within that boundary set that we have? Well, I decided to move back 0.009 of an inch. And the reason I did that was to get between the 204 and the 156, because that looked like the most stable position based on what I could see through the rifle scope, and shot this group, another 156. But we all know that 3-shot groups are not statistically significant, but neither are 12-shot groups. But let's go ahead and do a little movie magic here and combine all of the groups from the first 200 through the last 156 and see what that total of 12 shots looks like. That, my friends, is a well-shooting rifle and is perfectly suitable for PRS. Better yet, it shows me that the rifle is in a happy spot across a large window, or a garage door, if you will, which means that my load development, at least with brand new brass, is done. I don't need to do anything else. We can take this thing to matches with great confidence and know that we have a well-shooting rifle. Now, we could waste a lot more rounds of proving it out, but why not prove it out at a match? Because that's what the barrel's for. If I start to see indications that it's not doing what I want, I can always go back and adjust it later. But until then, there's no reason to. And remember, once I fired all of this brand new brass and got it fire formed and sized it the first time, I'm going to have to take a few rounds out to the range and see if the velocity changed and if the neck tension changed. And if neither one of those has changed, there's no need to do any more load development. We can just shoot 1 or 2 5-shot groups and make sure that we have this thing down and it's shooting well, call it good, and continue with our practice of shooting PRS as our primary profession in shooting instead of load development. I'm sure somebody's asking, what's ES and SD? Well, the 10-shot group at 600 yards had an ES of 14 and an SD of just a little over 4, which means that this is perfectly acceptable for long-range matches. With all that out of the way, the lesson here is pretty simple. Good loading practices mixed with good load development practices result in a well-shooting rifle in a very small number of rounds. As a matter of fact, I probably wasted all the ammunition for 40.7 and 40.8 because I had a pretty good suspicion that it was right already. And I ended up expending a total of 51 rounds in developing this load for this rifle, which means I can get more value out of the life of the barrel in competition rather than up on the bench or down on the ground, shooting group after group on paper. All right, guys, until next time, shoot straight, and I'll see you in the next video.